All right, let's jump into this. The effects of the mind on the body and what's been learned. The word placebo is actually, it's a line in the Bible, and it means I shall please. And there's a particular line about the placebos. And this actually was taken out and used in the Middle Ages as a name for a choir that would travel around and do events like marriages and funerals and things like that. They were called the placebos. I kept thinking, this is a great name for a band. Isn't it? Like, what's the name of your band? The Placebos? What a great name. And that's originally what it meant. That's where it comes from. That's Latin. I shall please. So really only in the last about 120 years has it come into the colloquialism that we're used to, right? The idea that you could take something that actually is nothing and it will have an effect that something would have, right? That it's actually really your mind that's doing it. And this research is absolutely fascinating, as we're going to see. There's different types of placebos. I always think about the pill, right? It's like a pill you're taking. But that's not it. There's placebo pills. There's placebo counseling. So for example, if we're doing counseling like psychotherapy, I might give you a placebo counseling where I'm really not doing anything, versus a system of psychotherapy. There's injections, placebo injections. This is the one that blew my mind, placebo surgeries. The research on that is the most incredible thing I came across in all this research. Placebo surgeries, fake surgeries. That was the biggest discovery of all this. So there's not just one placebo effect. Instead, the placebo effect depends on a host of factors. Let's go over those factors, right? The placebo, again, is you take a pill or something, you get a fake surgery, and you get the effect, nothing happened. There's nothing in the pill. It depends, for example, on the condition being treated. So the condition is a big one. For example, depression. Depression is very susceptible to the placebo effect. Very susceptible. It depends on the way in which the placebo is being administered, as we're going to see. The color of the placebo plays a role. The color, just what it looks like. Its price. What do you think the role is on price? The higher it is, the higher the price, the better it works. That's what's been found out. If it's a recognized brand name like Viagra, if it's fake Viagra, but somebody reads on the bottle that's Viagra, it works. That's good news, isn't it? That's like really? Oh my God. And dosage also matters. So how much? Okay, so let's check this out. All else being equal, if you take 4 a day versus 2, it works better. So the more times per day and the more of it you take, the better placebos work. That's dosage. So if you're like, oh, it's 3 o'clock, I've got to take my placebo. But nobody knows, right? So people know I've got to take my Viagra, or I've got to take my whatever it is, antidepressant, whatever. Brand name placebos work better than generic. So if somebody's doing a study, and we have two groups, and we're going to get into this, and one group's taking a placebo, but they believe it's a brand name, and the other is taking the real actual brand name, it works better than if they both believe they're taking generic. I was so impressed by this research. This is awesome. Okay, so we talked about the expense. Let's get into this. This is the big one right here. This one is that is the deal right there. The more grand, potent, and dramatic one believes the placebo to be, the greater is the associated placebo effect. So for example, if there's something that's intrusive, if you have to wake up at 5 in the morning to take your pill, then you have to immediately take it every hour. And it's just like intruding on your whole life. You got to think about it. It works better. If you have to go to psychotherapy every day, even though it's a fake psychotherapy, so you have to think about it every day, like, okay, I've got to drive over here for an hour and do this and then come back home, it works better. But the big one, well, we're getting to the big one. Well, fake injections. Okay, so let's talk about the story of Mr. Wright. This is one of the most famous stories in all of psychosomatic lore. It's a story of Mr. Wright. Mr. Wright was a very, very sick man. He was a very wealthy man. This is back in the 1950s. Mr. Wright was under the distinct impression, according to his doctor, that he was going to be saved of his deadly lymphoma at the last second by an innovative medicine. That innovative medicine was called Krebbiozin, and it came into the hospitals for a controlled study. And Dr. Wright found out about it, and he's told his doctor, I want that. I want that medicine. That's for me. That's going to save me of this lymphoma. His lymphoma was so bad that he had literally grapefruit-sized growths all over his body, under his armpits, behind his knees, right under his neck, right in through these areas here. He was going to die very quickly. And he believed at the last second he was going to be saved, and he begged his doctor for this medicine, Krebbiozin, which was an injection. He was so convinced that that was going to save him that he literally stormed into his doctor's office and demanded it, to the point where the doctor said, okay, I'll give it to you. It's fine, you got it. His doctor injected Mr. Wright on a Friday. By the Monday, his lymphomas had melted, quote unquote, like snowballs on a hot stove. Everybody else who was injected on the Friday didn't experience that result, but Mr. Wright did. He was so well by the Monday that he was running around the hospital, kissing the nurses, and literally took off in his private plane and flew away. A couple months later, he read in the newspaper that Krebbiozin doesn't work. All the symptoms came back. He went back to his doctor. He was beside himself, worried. It didn't work. Everything came back. The doctor realized what was going on and told Mr. Wright that if you take Krebbiozin plus these other things that weren't in the initial injection, it does work, and that the newspaper was wrong because they weren't aware of this latest research. And he injected him with distilled water. Immediately, all the lymphomas melted away like snowballs on a hot stove. Mr. Wright went home cured. Sure enough, a couple of months later, he read in the newspaper that Krebbiozin plus those extra medicines that were in there doesn't work. He was dead within 2 days. We're going to revisit that story. It's an amazing story, but that was one of the key stories that came out of the 1950s about the power of the mind over the body and really what a disease is. And that's a big part about psychosomatic archetypes, is what a disease is, what we believe it is, and then how it manifests and how we overcome it. They fall into certain categories and archetypes. I'm going to keep repeating that idea because I've got to plant seeds for what's going to happen tonight, because this is to grok what's going to happen tonight, to actually take it on and cognize it, is a big deal. It took me a long time to really understand what that means, the psychosomatic archetype. So I thought I'd plant a few seeds right now.